Hi, my name is Caroline, and I am a new volunteer at Cute Gardens. I am part of the Compost team.
Hi, I'm Natalia, and I am a Kew Garden compost coordinator. We're here in Kew Gardens today. Kew Gardens has been growing food communally and running a community compost program since 2015. So today we're going to talk to you about the lessons we've learned from growing and running the community compost program these last 5 years. Um, especially, this is especially for those New York community gardeners who are stepping up to the need for more public food scrap drop-offs. First of all, there are a few really basic things that make a big difference. One of them is to be as consistent as possible with your open hours. Decide on a schedule and stick to it, rain or shine, if possible. Second, just spreading the word digitally through your networks, but also on the ground. Also, just giving flyers to everyone who comes to drop off so that they'll distribute it throughout the neighborhood, throughout their buildings. And just signage in your garden as well.
So, I think the most important part of all this is that it should be participatory, and we want everyone to participate. And when they come in, we ask them to chop their scraps if they can, or to shred paper or cardboard.
Exactly. If there's one thing we've learned over the years, it's that making the drop-off participatory and not transactional is really key to real community compost because it actually keeps people coming back. People learn that they love to chop. It's very therapeutic. And also people get interested in the whole process. And I would say that about at least 50% of our volunteers come from people who have been dropping off, sometimes just for a few months or weeks, and sometimes all of a sudden, after years of dropping off, someone will join the team. So it's the constant source for more volunteers and more engagement.
Well, under COVID, things are definitely more difficult, but the basic model is still the same with some adjustments. We have fewer people in the garden during drop-off hours, and we try to enforce it in as nice a way as possible. But the participatory model can still hold up with a few of those adjustments. The compost work is constant work. There's work before the shifts, there's work during the shifts, and then there's work after the shifts. During the shifts, the work is very labor intensive. And to prepare for that before the shifts, you have to schedule volunteers to work during the shifts. We have to prepare the browns, find browns, make sure they're shredded, the cardboard and the brown paper. You have to find sawdust, that is not treated from non-treated plywood. You need leaves, tree prunings. So prepare all that. You need to make sure there's space for all the drop-offs. So prepare the space. So that is all the work that needs to happen before the shifts. And then during the shifts, there's accepting the drop-offs, asking people to chop up the scraps and mix them with shredded cardboard and carton, and putting it all in the bins. And then during the first 2 weeks, after you put the compost in the bin, it needs to be turned regularly and watered regularly. This is the hot composting phase. And then after that, it needs to be turned every 2 weeks. And then when a compost batch is ready, after that, you need to cure it and then sift it and prepare it for distribution.
How do we do that? All that with just volunteers? Well, frankly, you do it imperfectly. If you're all volunteers, you have to be flexible with each other and make adjustments to the ideal work plan. But that really isn't so hard to do. and compost is open to adjustments. So, for example, if 1 week you don't have the turning power that the piles need at the moment that they need it, you can just aerate deeply instead, or make adjustments to the recipe, add in more browns to remediate a pile that hasn't been turned. It's important to remember that it's possible to be flexible. Compost, after all, is about remediation and managing constant adjustments. All that being said, there are things that you can do to make sure that you have regular volunteers. One really important thing is to have a sort of tiered volunteer structure, to offer different levels of commitment and responsibility, so people can find their comfort level. We at Kew Gardens, we have 3 levels. We have the coordinators who manage the operation and also manage other volunteers. We have, and usually that's 2 or 3. We have captains, that's usually 6 or 8, and they sign up in advance for a shift, well in advance. So that's really important because it makes it easier to get more volunteers to complete the shift. It's not as big of an ask, and they kind of run the shift and make sure that everybody knows what to do. And then we have volunteers who can come in and out as they like, and who don't even have to have experience with how we do things here. So it sounds like that's a hierarchy, that the tiered structure is a hierarchy, but it's really only about the levels of the degree of commitment and availability. And it's important to stress that because it's important to have sort of a cooperative, decision-making, learning environment that makes the volunteer experience more satisfying and more sustainable. So we always aim to make information about composting available to everyone, so that if they want it, they can tap into it. And also, so we aim to make decisions. The people doing the work make the decisions. That's how it has to be. Then the other thing about this volunteer system is that we just do on the go training at each shift. Anyone new just gets trained by the captain, by the other volunteers, and that way we don't have to. That way it's just easier, and everyone is involved.
And part of the organization of volunteers, so that we can get all the work done, is making sure you know who to ask for what. So there are people who love to chop compost, and they love to get it into small little bits, and so those people participate in the drop-off hours, and there are others who can't get enough of turning bins. I've recently turned into one of those. I love to turn a bin at least once a week. Sometimes I come with my children, and they love watching me turn a bin, and that involves a lot of work, but it's a good time for them in the garden. So I turn a bin once a week.
As you can see, you need a team, and a deep team, to do all this work.
And I think, so the 2 main ingredients, I think, for the whole participatory composting process is connections between people, and connections between people and our other species that are part of our planet. We're done! Yay!